May I invite the next speaker, Dr. Sushil Kamath. He's going to speak on the physics of the ultrasound and the image optimization. Now, as we all know, physics is a very important chapter because to understand what is the best quality of the image and to get the best optimization of the image, we must be familiar with the knobology, especially from the control
Is there?
panel as well as from the returning
Is
signal.
there?
Hello.
Yes, sir. I'm there,
Yeah,
sir.
can you hear?
Yes, sir. I can hear.
Yeah.
Vaishali will have to stop the screen sharing.
Yeah. So may I invite Dr. Sushil Kamath to go ahead and his
It's
presentation?
Sushmit, sir. Sushmit
The
Oh,
Kamath.
I'm
name is
sorry.
Sushmit Kamath. It's
Okay,
wrongly
I'm
printed.
sorry. It
I'm
is
sorry for that.
Sushmit Kamath. I'm extremely sorry for pronouncing your name as Sushil. Extremely sorry. So may I request you to go ahead with your presentation, please?
Yeah. Thank you very much, sir. Good evening, all respected faculty, Srinivas sir, Yatin sir, and all the delegates of the webinar. I hope you can see my screen. So is my
Yeah,
slide
yeah,
available?
we can see you. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Nice to see.
So I'll be speaking on physics in echocardiography and image optimization. It is a very basic topic before we start echocardiography, and to read from the textbooks, it's a very boring topic. But nevertheless, it's a very important topic. So I'll make it as concise and interesting as possible. As we all know, echocardiography basically generates dynamic images of the heart from reflections of transmitted ultrasound. So there's an ultrasound transducer which records time delay for each returning reflection and then precisely calculates the location of the cardiac structures and creates an image map. Though the concept behind echocardiography was known from the 1700s, but the first moving pictures of the heart were produced by Adler and Hertz on 29th October 1953, and the first TE was demonstrated by Frazin in 1976. Ultrasound waves are sound waves which have the frequency above audible sound, that is more than 20,000 hertz, and this frequency is usually mentioned on the ultrasound transducer. Ultrasound waves also have the same physical properties as sound waves, such as amplitude, wavelength, and frequency. Amplitude is basically the height of the sound wave, and it denotes the loudness and the power in decibels. And the intensity of an ultrasound wave is directly proportional to the square of the amplitude. The wavelength is the distance between two sound waves, and it is inversely proportional to the frequency, which is in hertz. Propagation velocity is the velocity with which an ultrasound wave moves in the particular tissue, and it is depends on the density and stiffness of the medium. For example, if dense and medium such as bone transmits ultrasound very well, but something like air transmits it poorly. Whenever these ultrasound waves are incident on a particular tissue, they interact in one of the following four waves. Either there is reflection, refraction, attenuation, or scattering. So we'll see what denotes that. So when the ultrasound waves fall on a particular object, which is our particular object, if the object is perpendicular to that ultrasound beam, most of the waves will get reflected back, leading to a good echo image. Whereas if that particular object of interest, which we want to study, if it lies at an angle, then some of the waves will get refracted in a different direction, and only a part of the waves will get reflected back, leading to a poor echo image, and sometimes can even lead to echo dropouts. So this is the first rule of image optimization using 2D, that if you want to interrogate a particular structure, we have to select a view wherein that particular structure lies perpendicular to the ultrasound beam. Also, if there are certain structures which are irregular, such as RBC, small and irregular structures, then it leads to scattering of ultrasound waves, leading to scattering. So this is a 2D image. In this image, we can see that if we want to interrogate, suppose the subvalvular apparatus, we won't be able to see it in this view because the subvalvular apparatus is directly parallel to the ultrasound beam. So we have to select a view wherein the apparatus will be perpendicular, such as a transgastric two chamber, wherein we can see it accurately. Also, this is a case of mitral stenosis where we can see that RBCs in the LA are scattering the ultrasound waves, leading to a spontaneous echo contrast. Attenuation is the loss of intensity of ultrasound waves, which occurs either due to dispersion or absorption. Dispersion is when the beam gets diverged in the far field, and absorption is when the ultrasound wave is converted into heat due to friction. Hence, we have to use a lower frequency and a window which is closer to the structure which we want to visualize, so that the structure lies in a near field. So this is the second rule after that the structure should be perpendicular, is that we should try to find a window or a view where the structure which we want to see best lies in the near field, because if it is in the far field, then the waves will get attenuated. Ultrasound transducer is nothing but a ceramic piezoelectric crystal which is used as an ultrasonic vibrator and a receiver. The entire echocardiography is based on the principle of piezoelectricity. That is, when alternating current is acted upon the piezoelectric crystal, which is a polarized molecule trapped in a matrix, they start vibrating, converting electric energy into mechanical energy and producing an ultrasound wave. Similarly, this can happen in a reverse function, and the same transmitter can act as a receiver of ultrasound also and convert it back into electronic signals. The ultrasound beam which is produced by such a transducer is just like a beam of a flashlight. It has as already said, it has a near field and a far field. We have to make sure that what we want to visualize lies in the near field, and to do that we need an ideal narrow beam so that it improves the resolution, it increases the intensity of the returning echoes, and it reduces artifact. So one way to get a narrow beam is to use a large transducer with high frequency so that it produces a narrow beam. But it's not always possible that the structure we need to see always lies in the near field. It may not be always possible. Then we can use something known as focusing. Focusing is a dial which is present on the ultrasound machine. What it exactly does is it focuses the ultrasound beams to that particular structure wherever you focus it, so that it can be better visualized. And how is this focusing done? It is done by use of phased array crystals, in which instead of having a single crystal, there is an array of crystals which are in a linear fashion, but instead of activating all of them at once, the crystals at one end are activated before the central ones, so that the beam does not go in a linear fashion, but it goes in a directed towards a particular target which can be better visualized. So getting a narrow beam, keeping the structure in the near field, and focusing, all three help us to improve the resolution of an image. So what exactly is resolution? Resolution is the ability of the ultrasound wave to distinguish two separate points as separate in space. For example, if there are two objects which are in the line of the ultrasound beam, then they should be seen objects, and this is known as axial resolution. And when the two objects lie either horizontally or vertically, it is known as lateral or elevational resolution. So to optimize the resolution, we need to increase the near field by using a higher transducer frequency, larger transducer radius, and also use focusing. So preferably, we need to position the transducer with a high frequency close to the target of interest to optimize both lateral and elevational resolution. For temporal resolution, I'll just come to it a bit later when I discuss 2D. So now, what are the various display formats? Once the information receives back, there are various display formats by which we can see it on the screen. The most primary method was A mode, in which the amplitude of the returning signals was shown as vertical spikes. This evolved into a B mode, where instead of the vertical spikes, pixels of various brightness were denoted. Now what we usually use is a 2D mode and a M mode, which are variations of B mode. In a 2D, instead of having a single B mode, the pulses are scattered across a sector to display a tomographic section. And in M mode, we can add temporal information by displaying a series of collected B modes over a series, and with a very high frame rate of 2000 frames per second. So this gives us a one-dimensional ice prick view through the heart, and it gives us a superior display of dynamic motion and axial resolution. M mode is the best mode for examining timing of a particular cardiac event, which can be displayed with a ECG. But and one of the drawbacks of M mode being that it can only sense the axial motion, so it gives a limited view of the anatomy. It does not give the lateral motion which can be given to us by 2D echocardiography. So this is a sector of a 2D echocardiography mode, which we use most commonly. So in 2D echo, we direct the pulse across a 30 to 90 degree sector of cardiac anatomy, and we repeat the entire process to update the image and capture motion. There are certain terms which we should know when we are discussing 2D echo. One is the pulse repetition frequency, which is the rate at which ultrasound pulses are transmitted per second. Next is the frame, that is, each image which is created by a sector is known as a frame, and the number of frames in a second is known as frame rate. So in a 2D echo, the frame rate is around 30 to 60 frames per second, whereas in the M mode, it was around 2000 per second. Frame rate is dependent on the sector depth and the sector width. Temporal resolution is synonymous with frame rate, and to improve it, we need to narrow the imaging sector so that it decreases the time taken to scan a frame, and we need to decrease the sector depth so that it decreases the pulse repetition frequency. So coming to optimization of image, we have already discussed what we need to do to get a good 2D image. First of all, we need to keep it perpendicular to the image, to the beam. We need to select a view which is closest, keeping it in the near field. We need to see a sector depth to see that the depth is just beyond the structure of interest. For example, we can see here that the depth is ideal, but here it is increased, so we get a small image. We need to focus on a particular object, whatever we want to study. Then we need to keep a small sector size to allow higher frame rates. And lastly, we need to keep a proper gain setting. So gain is increasing the amplitude of electrical signal generated by the returning ultrasound signals. As we can see in this image, the gain setting is poor, so the entire image appears dark, whereas here it is on the higher side, and that's why the entire image is looking bright. This has a ideal gain setting wherein the image is such that the low amplitude signals are shown as dark gray and the high amplitude are shown as white. One of the tricks in adjusting gain is to eliminate the operating lights, so that if there is a higher ambient light, then we tend to keep a higher gain setting to get a better image. Gain are of two types. One is time gain compensation, where we can selectively adjust the gain at depth of every sector, and it can be used to amplify the signals returning from the far field. And secondly is the lateral gain compensation, where we can improve the of the tissues which are side by side, which lead to attenuation. So we can amplify the weaker signals to a greater extent, this can be used to improve the visualization of endocardial borders. So now after finishing 2D, I would like to include Doppler in the physics of echocardiography. So with 2D image, we can see the lateral motion and anatomy, but we cannot study the blood flow and the blood flow dynamics. So applying the Doppler principle to echocardiography helps us to do that. And it detects the direction and velocity of moving blood within the heart. It takes into account the Doppler effect, which was described by Christian Doppler in 1842, that an observer perceives a change in wavelength or frequency if the sound or light wave, if the source is moving relative to them. So this is used in echo, where we examine the change in frequency of ultrasound reflected from RBCs. For example, the Doppler transducer, it measures the Doppler shift between the transmitted and the reflected frequency. So if there is no flow, then both these frequencies will be equal. But if there is a blood flow towards the transducer, that is the RBCs are moving towards the transducer, then the reflected frequency will be higher than the transmitted frequency. And this will be same in the opposite if the blood is flowing away from the transducer. This is just same like if an ambulance with a siren is coming towards you, we feel that the volume is increasing when it comes towards you, and when it is going away, it decreases. But actually the volume of the siren has remained the same. So it is similar to that. When the RBCs are coming towards the transducer, the frequency increases, whereas it decreases when it's going away. And this is known as the Doppler shift. So once we can know the direction, to measure the velocity, we need to use a mathematical equation, that is the Doppler equation, in which the Doppler shift is directly proportional to the blood flow velocity and the angle at which the Doppler beam makes with the blood flow. So if the beam is parallel to the blood flow, then the cos of 0 will be 1, and we'll be accurately able to get the velocity. Whereas if your Doppler beam is perpendicular to the blood flow, then cos of 90 is 0. So we won't be able to appreciate any blood flow. So this is directly opposite to 2D, because in 2D we needed to keep the structure of interest at perpendicular to the beam and get an accurate result. Even an error of 10 degrees, even an error of 10 degrees in the angle will lead to a 8% error, which is more significant if we are studying a severe valvular lesion. So we need to keep the Doppler beam as parallel to the blood flow as possible. Here is an example. If we are trying to study the flow through an aortic valve, if we use the aortic valve short axis view, we will not get to see a proper accurate flow. But if we use the deep transgastric view and align the Doppler beam in the parallel to the aortic flow through the aortic valve, we'll be able to get better accurate measurements. The presentation of Doppler data can be in two ways. One is audible broadcast, where the Doppler shift which lies in the audible range is amplified and broadcasted so that the operator can listen to the loudness and can precisely position the Doppler beam. And secondly, this texture and pitch can be also used to diagnose. I hope you can listen to this. This is a short axis aortic valve. It is not appreciating any audible broadcast. When we use the deep transgasting, it will give a harsher, louder pitch when the flow is aligned to the Doppler beam. Similarly, if there is a severe aortic stenosis patient, the pitch will be even harsher if there is a turbulent flow. The second presentation is spectral display, in which the Doppler data is plotted as a time velocity curve. The frequencies with greater amplitude are marked with brighter pixels, and high quality signals result in clean envelope, sharply demarcated border, and clear peaks. There are three types of Doppler techniques: pulsed wave, continuous wave, and color flow mapping. Pulse wave Doppler uses a single crystal as an emitter and a receiver. So signals associated at a specific depth or location are evaluated, and this is known as the sample volume. For example, if you want to study the transmitral flow, we need to place the sample volume between the mitral leaflets to get an accurate reading. Since there is a repeating pattern of ultrasound transmission and reception, both are not happening at the same time, it is dependent on the pulse rate frequency, that is the rate at which the device repeatedly generates the sound bursts. Hence, only a limited frequency and blood flow velocity can be accurately measured by pulse wave Doppler, which is the 1/2 of the pulse repetition frequency, known as the Nyquist limit. So as long as we are interrogating a velocity which is within the Nyquist limit, it will accurately show the direction and the velocity. But if you are interrogating a velocity which is higher than the Nyquist limit, the signal will get ambiguous, which is known as aliasing, wherein the velocity cannot be determined and the direction may be shown as opposite. And in spectral display, this may also be seen as a wraparound. I'll just describe aliasing using two models. One is the clock analogy, where you see that the hand clock is moving in a clockwise fashion. But as long as you see it every 15 minutes, you will feel that it is moving in a clockwise manner. If you tend to notice it every 40 minutes, then it will look as if it is moving in the opposite direction. Similarly, it can also be described using a wagon wheel model, whereas you can see here, the blue point on the wagon wheel is moving in an anti-clockwise direction. But if the velocity keeps on increasing, our eyes also have a certain pulse repetition frequency. So as the velocity increases, our eyes will feel that the blue dot is actually moving clockwise when actually it is moving anti-clockwise. Somewhere over here, we can see that it is moving. It feels like it is moving in the clockwise direction. This is the wraparound, which is seen on a spectral display, can be reduced by changing the baseline or increasing the scale. Continuous wave Doppler does not have the limitations which a pulse wave Doppler has. Here, two separate crystals are used for transmitting and receiving the images. So velocities which are higher, more than 7 meters per second, can be evaluated. And it does not depend on any sample volume. It tells the highest velocities during the beam path. And it does not have a clear envelope. It shows a shaded envelope with multitude of velocities. This is a flow through the normal aortic valve, but in case it is some severe aortic stenosis, the velocities will be much higher and can be easily evaluated. Color flow mapping combines 2D and pulse wave Doppler to give a 2D image which shows us the velocity of blood. Blue color is denoted by the flow away from the transducer and red towards. And since it uses pulse wave Doppler, it is also susceptible to aliasing. So color flow mapping is basically just used to identify the abnormality, which should be further interrogated using either pulse wave Doppler or continuous wave Doppler. So my take home message is that for good 2D imaging, Doppler and optimization, for 2D imaging, we need a window and a view to orient the beam perpendicular and closest to the structure of interest. Focusing should be used to get a narrow beam. 2D mode is used for anatomy and lateral motion, and M mode for axial motion and timing. In case of Doppler, we need to align the Doppler beam parallel to the blood flow which we want to study. Pulse wave Doppler is for low velocities and continuous wave for the higher velocities, and color flow Doppler to identify a flow abnormality. These are my references. Thank you very much, and happy Ganesh Chaturthi for everyone.